which is why I remember one time when a doctor came into my case management office, and I said, what's going on with something with this patient? He said to me, I only deal with the stomach. And I thought, okay, does this guy not realize that the stomach is attached to the rest of the person, and it may be related? In fact, it was. I can't remember specifically what it was. And this is what holistic medicine is, and this is why a lot of holistic modalities work, is because they work on the mind and the emotions and the physical body. A lot of them do. So I'll, a little bit later, I'll go through some of those. Autoimmune diseases are related to the mind-body connection. A lot of people have lifestyle issues, relationship issues, childhood issues that they've had for a long time, and their bodies just wear down. Names are created for these illnesses because the physical symptoms are similar, but often the mind or emotional mental piece is different. And what I mean by that is two people might come in with rheumatoid arthritis. You might treat the rheumatoid arthritis the same, but if they really want to go into the deeper healing that they need for those illnesses, they have two different things, probably two different things going on with them in their body, mind, emotions. And so, for example, I had a friend who had rheumatoid arthritis, did really well. I mean, she was 70 and she was on no medications. It was juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, which, if you know as a nurse, people become really debilitated by the time they're in their 60s usually. So she wasn't. And her doctor said, tell me what you did. And she said, I can't really tell you what I did because I can't tell you what I did and have somebody else do the same thing. They have to do what's best for them. And sometimes it's a challenge. In fact, it can be a lifelong challenge. But it can help them get better if they can seek things out. Okay, so I want to just point to page 2. I think it's page 2. Let me see. Oh, page 2 is where the little girl is sitting at the computer, and she says, we have made a serious but not fatal error. We have let a child program our lifetime computer. And I love this picture because it's perfect because, for example, something could happen to you when you're 2 and you don't remember it. Something could happen to you when you're 8 and you don't remember it. But it affects your whole life.
Yep.
You know, I'll give you an example. I have a friend whose mother died when he was 18 months to 2 years. And he thought it was no big deal. You know, what's the big deal? Yet it has affected everything that's happened in his life, everything, to a point of severity. Probably what happened was that child's mother never came home, and they had a very close connection with each other, and the child thought they did something wrong. Feeling like my mother left because I did something wrong is just reinforced as time goes on unless they can figure it out through their relationships. Okay, so what does a child do when something feels bad and they can't fix it, escape, or stop? They hit the delete key, so they forget it. So there are people who've had a lot of trauma in their childhood and they don't remember their childhood at all. They can remember it later using therapy, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And where do bad feelings disappear? The left brain is the thinking brain, the right brain is the feeling brain. They can go into both of them, either one of them. But those two parts work differently. So the thinking brain is what we store. Some people are very left brain. They remember a lot of things. They can get a PhD really easily. They love to learn things and learn more information, whereas right brain people struggle with that, although they can still do it. They're the creative-minded people. Usually they can think of different ways of doing things. They're unusual. That sort of thing. And interestingly enough, more of our kids are right-brained now than ever before. More of us older people are more left-brained. Some of us are right-brained, but we learn to be left-brained.
Why is that? Why, you said more kids today are right-brained. Why is that?
They're being born that way. My personal feeling, and I've heard it from others, is that they're evolving. They're evolving to be more right-brained. It's the way their brains are connecting. Yeah. So I love to work with moms and 20-somethings in this because when I talk about this, they get it. they get, well, why? They just know what to do. If I can direct them to what they know, they can use it. A lot of them have a lot of challenging issues with their relationships with their family, though, because they're coming thinking in a different way, and we don't really know what to do with that. Some of us just intuitively know what to do, but some people don't. And it's understandable. It's because they really are changing. Things are changing in the world, kids are changing, and I don't know if that answers the question. Okay. Okay. I want to talk about unseen wounds. You might say something to somebody and it hurts their feelings. You had no idea. You don't know the wounds that they hide that they can't see. I'm not talking about physical wounds, like a broken bone or a cut or a scar or anything like that. I'm not even talking about like an internal organ that's damaged. I'm talking about emotional wounds that are held in their body. So when they have a reaction, that is affecting their emotional wound. And that is why we need to work on relationships when we have an illness as well as the physical problem. We need to work on both. We can't ignore that we still have to go to the doctor, still have to take our medicine, or still go to our holistic alternative person and the doctor. All right, these are stories about people with illnesses. She was a very angry woman, yet she was just as disconnected with her rage as I had been from mine. This is a woman who had similar problems and became a healer. So she's talking about a client that she had. She had developed hemorrhoids in her 20s, painful varicose veins in her 30s. By the time she arrived in my office, the pain had progressed to her stomach. She was also in a lot of emotional pain because her husband had left their marriage and was living with this new girlfriend. During the course of their 15-year marriage, she was a career sales associate and he was a banker. She had been the superior breadwinner and rubbed her husband's face in that fact regularly. He had brought 2 young children to the marriage, but she never embraced the children and had always treated them as inconvenient nuisance. She wanted her husband all to herself. While he loved her a great deal, Jane's husband found her more and more difficult to live with and was deeply affected by her cold and uncaring manner with her children. He had hoped that she would love him and his children, but the children had no safe harbor safe harbor with her, and in fact felt more and more rejected by her over time. One night, her husband turned her down when she wanted sex. She was furious. "How dare you reject me?" she said, and threatened to kick him out of the house. Much to her surprise, he actually moved out of the house and into a trailer. Jane was devastated. She felt certain he would come back with his tail between his legs. However, her husband had no desire to return to her critical, cold ways and found a new girlfriend. 2 years later, Jane was still bitter, angry, filled with rage and jealousy, and desperate to get her ex-husband back. It took Jane a long time to make the connection between her rage and her ulcers, varicose veins, and hemorrhoids. Through our work, she connected with the depth of her anger, the roots of which predated her anger at her ex-husband. When Jane was a little girl, her father repeatedly rejected her for not being a boy. Regardless of what she did or how hard she tried, she was never good enough in her father's eyes. Deeply hurt and wounded by his rejections, she repeated her father's pattern with her husband and stepchildren. So this is a perfect example of somebody who didn't know that their reactions to their husband, and he didn't know what her reactions were. He didn't know they were related to previous to their marriage. They just didn't know how it worked. It's possible if they found it earlier, they could have saved their marriage and worked things out. Who knows? You never know what's going to happen. But I think it's a pretty clear, simple explanation. There's always a lesson in healing. And I would say that even when someone is very ill and perhaps dying, there's still healing going on because there's relationship healing going on. And I see that all the time. It's very cool. So people think it's hopeless. Well, it's not really hopeless because there's healing going on. And when healing goes on with those people, from a holistic perspective, it's going on with the soul. And so the soul carries on. So the soul is more healed when it leaves the body. And anyway, that's why I like holistic
I have two
medicine.
cousins who have their sisters, and they had a terrible relationship with their mother, who is approaching death. She's 98, I think. But anyway, she's near the end of her life. And her personality has changed. She's much more loving and accepting and kind of funny. And they're both like, this is the mother we wish we had always had. But at least, like you said, there's that healing going on right now between them, which is really nice to see.
It's very nice, and you get your whole life to do it.
Yeah.
And if for some reason it doesn't happen with that person, a lot of times we'll get another relationship in our lives that teaches us that lesson, so we can still do it. Yeah, that's a great story. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, I have one more story here. How are we doing? Okay on time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, here it is. Okay. Becky, a 50-year-old woman, came to my office with a diagnosis of hardening of the arteries. 10 years previously, Becky's husband had an affair. When she discovered his infidelity, she closed down and promised herself, I will never forgive him. It became her anthem for years, 100% commitment to bitterness and hard-heartedness. She readily and rather proudly admitted her position, but she was unconscious of the havoc it was causing in her body and oblivious to the pain that it was causing her children. Becky's refusal to forgive her husband became like a brick wall around her heart. In terms of her arteries, the conduits of blood and life became hardened and thickened with rage. There are many people right now with this problem of being unable to forgive and having somebody in their life that caused this anger and rage with them. Many people. And if they don't fix it, illness will come. I hate to say it that way, but it's just so obvious more than ever before. Forgiveness is really letting go. So, for example, that person may have done this to you, but what you learn to do is let go of what happened, and it takes a lot of hard work. It doesn't mean you go back, and have a relationship with that person. It means you just let go of that issue, and it's incredibly healing to be able to do that. And it can take years, and that's okay. Initially, Becky was immovable. She wanted me to fix her, but she wanted nothing to do with whatever I suggested. She did not want to hear that she could do something, especially if it involved changing her mind about her husband. I have every right to be angry, she said. When I told her that the anger could ultimately destroy her health, as gently as I could, I asked her to consider the possibility of forgiving him. And it's really important with people not to push them, but to gently be kind and help them to see, because they're not going to see it until they're ready to. And sometimes I'll have people come in and they'll move like a tiny little bit, but something I said or something that I put in their head, they went somewhere else down the road and saw someone else, and they worked on maybe something related to that, and they did improve. So, it just takes a while, and you have to go to different people. Never give up. Okay, I think that's, anyway, her arteries did become clearer, which is really amazing, because a lot of people, once they get this atherosclerosis or hardening of their arteries, it stays. Now, let's see. Next, I want to talk a little bit about what do we do? Relationships include family, friends. It's on intimate relationships, co-worker relationships, and I had a good story there about a co-worker where the employee was frustrated because the co-worker wasn't doing their part of the work. And how many times do we see that? That's a relationship. That person is teaching them something. Sometimes we just have to realize, that person is meant to be there just to poke me until I heal myself. So I just have to be accepting that person is not meant to do that work that it seems like they're supposed to do, but they're just not going to do it. Maybe I'm supposed to do it. Maybe I'm supposed to do all of it. Maybe I can do the best I can. Maybe I can tell the employer, hey, you know what? I can do this much, but that's as much as I can do. And then I have to go home, take a nap. Community or group relationships. More people, we were talking earlier about community groups are starting to form more. And it's going to be happening moving forward in the future because people want to get together. People want to share time with each other. And it's really the best way to work together.